Hello, members of the most illustrious fantasy football league, Eagle Point Butts. It is I, your commissioner and 3-time undisputed champion, Chase E. Callahan, coming at you live from HQ. Here again, week one, to impart my blessing upon you, my knowledge on fantasy football as a member of the Billy IQ Fantasy Football Brain Trust, pictured here. Next to Zachary Pelker, who does not need any more fantasy football advice from me, as he is the other half of the Billy IQ Fantasy Football Brain Trust, and now 4-time league champion. So, Zach, if you want to skip the video, please do. The rest of you common people, get some pens, get some paper handy. Let's get some notes going. We're going to go through the power rankings for week one, positives, negatives, and what surprises happened, because there were some surprises that happened. What I will say is, with the rankings, I think there are some teams that are in the lower tier that will eventually rise up just because they had some crazy stuff happen this week. But we're going to get into that. With no further ado, let's hop right into the power rankings. All right, in the number one spot this week, we have the 4-time champion, Zachary Pelker, ZP3. Faced off against Tim this week and had a great start to the season. His team really showed what it's capable of if they can stay healthy this year. Scrolling on down here, I think Lamar rushing this much won't be sustainable long term. I don't think that's a shocking thing to say, but this was kind of their mini Super Bowl. The Ravens versus the Chiefs, and they ended up losing at the end of the game, obviously. But I think Lamar will do more passing. I don't really think the point totals are going to take that big of a hit for him. But he probably won't be rushing so much. They'll probably rely more on Derrick Henry. But I don't think 20 to 25 points is anything we're going to see go away for Lamar. I think it's mostly going to be around that. Joe Mixon got 31 touches. Okay. He's not going to get 31 touches moving forward, but you could really have this point total, have it. And still a great game by Joe Mixon. Zach still gets the W, and I think that's really going to be consistent for Mixon as long as he stays healthy. Bijan is going to get better as the season goes on, unless Kirk actually gets hurt and misses time. Mike Evans, that catch that Baker Mayfield threw into the end zone for like the 20-yard line, I mean, that's just classic Mike Evans, beating the receiver in man coverage one-on-one, just bodying the guy. Freaking awesome. Awesome to see. Once again, the biggest concern is going to be health. He's got some players who are health conscious. Jalen Waddle got removed from the game a little bit for concussion protocol. But a lot of these players look as good as advertised to start the year. No injuries yet for Zach. Only negative that I would say is the target share for Dalton Kincaid. Not great. He only had 2 targets, and the Cardinals are not a top tier defense, and so you would expect more from him. I do think that changes moving forward because they do want to utilize him. But this is a really strong team. It's going to be a headache for anyone to play against. I mean, even the Jets are going to have better games. They played the Niners. So, once again, it's going to be a strong team to play against for whoever is playing. I mean, Xavier Worthy, what a start to the year. What a start to the year. Yeah, so number one spot definitely goes to Zach for this week. All right, and in the 2 spot this week, we have the other half of the Billy IQ Fantasy Football Brain Trust, the boss, the undisputed 3-time champion, putting the beat down, laying the wood on Brennan's buttholes. And great week. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Zach in the 1 spot, Chase in the 2 spot, Chase in the 1 spot, Zach in the 2 spot. The more things change, the more they stay the same. But both of us took on teams that scored over 100 points this week and emerged as the victors. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about this week. People clamored about taking Cooper Kupp, round 3. People clamored about taking Rashee Rice earlier than they thought. And then minutes before kickoff, the boss makes a 3-time champion move of taking out the Steelers defense and putting in the Bears who had a field day in the second. I mean, they had a field day just in the second half of that game against the Titans. Wow. So we come down here, we take a look at what's going on. Jordan Love, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Whenever I saw Brennan's lineup, I know if you go look at the draft rankings video, Brennan has a very good team. Scared me. Derrick Henry and Breece Hall, scary. Don't know what's going to happen with Drake London and Chris Olave, how they're going to be utilized. The two things that I told myself that I thought is if Derrick Henry and Breece Hall were held to under 30 points combined, and Jordan Love could score me more than 15 points, I felt like I was going to win that game. And lo and behold, Jordan Love, before he died, got 16.4 points. Derrick Henry and Breece Hall got less than 30. Now, that's not going to be, I think they're going to have more weeks where they're going to be scoring more than 30 combined than less than. I just happened to have the good week. And so, looking at my team, the positives, Isaiah Pacheco dominated the backfield for Kansas City. CeeDee Lamb was able to get the ball at will. They reduced his usage in the second half because they didn't need it. I don't like that because that's the same thing they did last year, and I hated it. But in a close game, he's going to get a monster amount of touches. Rashee Rice looks like the offense in Kansas City flows through Rashee Rice and Isaiah Pacheco. So great spot to be in there. Devon Achane also looked good. The negative, got to mention Cooper Kupp, my boy. Picked him in almost all my leagues this year at the 3-4 turn. Just unreal performance. Puka being on the IR means good things for Cooper Kupp. Negatives. DK got absolutely shut down by Pat Surtain. Now, Pat Surtain is a special player. DK is not going to be facing Pat Surtain most weeks. Not super worried about that. Trey McBride's usage is going to go up. Devon Achane, his ankle is tweaked. I think he's going to play this week, though. And then Jordan Love died, at least for 4 to 6 weeks until he rises again. Also, Brock Bowers with a sneaky good rookie game. A lot of targets in Vegas, especially whenever it was such a bad week overall for tight ends. But yeah, overall, very positive week. We'll plug in the love hole, and I think top to bottom, second best team this week. Points say that. Just not a lot of holes once we plug the love hole. So, good week for the boss. And then in the 3 spot this week, we've got the Victoria's Secret, Champ winning a big first game against Micah division foe. You'll find a theme over the next 3 power rankings spots, which is running backs looking really good this week and receiving cores not looking good this week, which is not a good look overall because this is such a NFL-wide wide receiver focused league now. But we'll take a look at what's going on with Champ's team. James Conner, great pick for Champ. I mentioned it in the draft rankings video that Champ is going to get tremendous value out of James Conner. I think he picked him in the 6th round. I mean, maybe earlier than that, but that's going to be a massive upside play for Champ. James Conner is a top 10 running back if he stays healthy the whole year. So great pickup there for Champ. Kyren Williams is going to have better games. Detroit has a great defense. And so 11.4 points, you're not going to hate that out of week 1 for Kyren Williams. And he also is dominating the Rams backfield. That's what you want to see. Now, finally, Kenneth Walker, excellent game for the Seahawks. Another massive upside pick for Champ if he stays healthy. The question for Champ is going to be the receiving core. And Amon-Ra, 1.3 points is abysmal. It was obvious that the Rams wanted to take him out of the game, which is why Jameson Williams had such a great game. That's not going to happen again moving forward, especially if Jameson Williams continues to make teams pay for taking Amon-Ra out of the game. Amari Cooper is an extremely talented wide receiver still. He's at the mercy of Happy Ending McGee at quarterback. And Devontae Adams is stuck with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. And so that's going to be the Achilles heel for Champ this year, especially if one of his big running backs misses time. Now, if they don't miss time, they're good enough to win him games on their own sometimes, which we saw this week. So positives for Champ. Running back's fantastic. His team should continue to average this kind of point production because I'm gonna say the running backs are going to come down a little bit, but those receivers are going to start hitting a little bit better. The negatives, Kenneth Walker getting hurt is going to be a massive deal for Champ if he misses time. And his receivers, other than Amon-Ra being tied to such bottom of the barrel quarterbacks, not good. But overall, solid week for Champ. Great start to the season. And I think he's well deserving of the 3 spot this week. All right, in the 4 spot this week, I had to put him there because he got the win. I didn't want to put him there, but once again, I have to put him there because he got the win and he did score points this week. That is Brett. Getting carried by Josh Allen. What a beautiful man, Josh Allen. To the win against not the craziest competition. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh my gosh, what a week. Josh Allen could have put up 10 points and Bert would have won. But anyways, I digress. Brett made a very smart move. And for all the crap I've given him about his draft and stuff like this, he made a very smart move, handcuffing Christian McCaffrey with Jordan Mason. I need to give him credit for that because if he would not have done that and somebody would have been able to pick up Jordan Mason, that's a league-changing move right there, especially because the Niners are not going to hurry Christian McCaffrey back anytime soon. They would love for him to get as much rest as possible to keep him fresh for later on in the season and for big games if needed. And Jordan Mason looked fantastic. And so why rush that? Now, what would be scary about that is if they do try to ease Christian McCaffrey back in, because it's not like you can't play Christian McCaffrey if he's in the lineup. And then do they start splitting carries to keep him healthy with Jordan Mason because Jordan Mason looks so good? I don't know. Just a thought. But Bert, outside of a couple of players, real question marks this week, which leads me to our newest segment. How are things looking for Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Play, but look at the rookie here. Here he goes, and everybody leaves him, and nobody.
All right, so welcome to our Marvin Harrison Jr. tracking segment, where we're going to look at where he's at compared to the league leaders in yards, targets, and receptions this year. So let's start with yards. Jayden Reed, what a week 1 for him. Now let's go find Marvin Harrison Jr. See some names on here. Don't see him in the top 50. Don't see him in the top 100. Where is Marvin Harrison Jr.? Oh, there he is. Tied for 196th with 4 yards this year. Now let's come on over. Let's look at targets. And you know what? Let's just control F this guy. Oh, you know what? He's not in the top 50. I'm going to have to go load more. Let's see here. Where are you at, Marvin Harrison Jr.? Let's control F him now. There he is. 104 in targets. And where is he at in receptions? I'm not even going to look. It's week 1. So yeah, that's where Marvin Harrison Jr. is so far this year. Can't wait to check back in next week when we see where he is at once again. So, Bert still scored over 100 points. That's not something we should take lightly because he has some heavy hitters on this team. Josh Allen being one of them. Jordan Mason, as long as he's the lead running back in San Francisco, could be a league winner. David Montgomery picked right off where he left off last year. Remember, Bert had Jahmyr Gibbs last year, and you saw how well David Montgomery did. Picked up Monty this year. Shrewd move, Bert. Now, outside of that, unfortunately, things don't look great. Rachaad White did put up 10.6 points. But Rachaad White is also going to be splitting more time with Bucky Irving, who was the better-looking running back last week. Brandon Ayuk with only 28 receiving yards. You got to think that's going to go up, but he's not the number 1 receiver in San Francisco. Depth charts may say that. Deebo Samuel is what the offense flows through if Christian McCaffrey is not in the lineup. So Brandon Ayuk is really not the number 1 wide receiver in San Francisco, although he will have better games. Tank Dell is the 3rd or 4th option with a lot of mouths to feed in a hungry Houston offense. I don't know what else to say about that. We come down and look at his bench. Jayden Reed, big game. I love seeing that from Jayden Reed. Great pickup. Bert, how does he do now that Jordan Love is out? And was that a week 1 flash in the pan? Remains to be seen. But for now, and also love that Brett played the Seahawks. It's his team. For now, Bert's in the 4 spot. We'll see what happens as the year goes on. All right, in the 5 spot this week, we have the proud owner and operator of Brennan's Buttholes, Brennan the Biz Callahan, who didn't have a bad week. He just happened to run up against the 1-2-3-time undisputed champion, the Boss, this week, and have the other half of the Billy IQ Fantasy Football Brain Trust. Like I mentioned when I talked about Champ's team, the next 3 teams with Champ included, it's going to kind of be the same story. Really strong running back cores, and you wonder what's going on with their wide receiver cores. Now, what I'll say is I think Brendan has one of the better teams of those 3, maybe the best team of those 3, especially if CMC misses time and he's sidelined for a few games. Because Jordan Mason is great. He looked great. But Jordan Mason is not Christian McCaffrey. And so taking a look at Brendan's team, Derrick Henry and Breece Hall right off the bat. I was excited to play Brendan week 1 because Kansas City and San Francisco have both terrific defenses. Kansas City's defense is so underrated again somehow. Both had fantastic defenses. And so I was like, man, if there's a week to play this 2-headed running back monster, it's this week. So I was very glad to be able to sneak through with that. They're going to combine for 30 plus points most weeks. They just didn't this week because they were playing such great defenses. Anthony Richardson, great breakout game for him. I'm going to pump the brakes on him a little bit because most of his passing yards and his 2 passing touchdowns came on big shots. And that's not super sustainable. And he didn't look very good outside of that, purely from a passing side of things. And so I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit on him. But yeah, Brendan's team overall, the positives, the running back core is going to be elite. Tony Pollard looked fantastic against a good defense in the Bears. So Brendan's running backs are going to win him games. Brian Thompson Jr. is a bright spot for Brendan. I would be interested to see if he plays him because he looked like the number 1 receiver in Jacksonville. Now, his other receivers, this is what I mentioned in the draft video. I like Drake London. I think he is a fantastic talent. I like Chris Olave. I also think he's a fantastic talent. They're tied to quarterbacks that aren't that great, offensive schemes that aren't that great. You just don't know if they're good enough to rise above that. And we haven't seen them rise above that yet. Chris Olave had some good games last year, but nothing consistent. And so I worry for Brennan because that can be a killer. You spent, a 3rd and a 4th round pick on these guys. You need them to produce. George Pickens looked all right against a bad defense, mediocre defense. Atlanta's defense isn't that bad. Jake Ferguson lost an ankle. He might not miss time, but he also wasn't like a showstopper either. And so there are some holes here for Brennan that he needs to get plugged. That Drake London, Chris Olave one, that'll be killer if they don't figure something out there. Because whenever he plays most teams, Derrick Henry, Breece Hall are going to be able to carry him through. When he plays the top half of teams in this league, like Zach, Champ, I just don't know if he'll have enough firepower if that team's, firing on all cylinders. So that's the only thing with Brendan. That's kind of what happened this week for him. Again, he scored over 100 points. He just played a team that was way more balanced. And so tough week, but I think the sky is the limit for Brennan. And so if I'm him, maybe I'm shopping around one of my top tier running backs to try to make sure I solidify the wide receiver position. But I'll leave that to the Biz. He deserves the number 5 spot this week. And I think as the weeks go on, especially with Brian Thomas Jr., if he continues to do well, with the weeks going on, Brennan's going to rise up in the rankings. All right, and then I got to put Luke in the 6th spot this week. He's already crushed his initial forecast from the NFL app that said he would go 0-16. Well, it's week 1 and Luke won. So I got to say, big shout out to Luke, Leather Daddy, coming in hot. What a freaking performance by your boy Saquon Barkley. I did really like that pick. I just hope he stays healthy. That's the only reason I would have faded Saquon at all, is just the health. And right now he's running behind the best offensive line of his career. He's running in the best offense of his career. And so the sky's the limit. And they really utilized him like crazy week 1. I don't think they're going to utilize him almost like Lamar. They're not going to utilize him that much moving forward. They just wanted him to really have a big week 1, to show the Giants how much they suck. And so moving forward, I would see them pull that back a little bit. But again, he could score 15, 20 points easily weekly. health is the only concern with Saquon. Other than that, Stephon Diggs had a great game. But it's almost like a flash in the pan type of game. I mean, he was extremely touchdown dependent. He only had 33 receiving yards, just another mouth to feed in a hungry Houston offense. And there are some spots where I'm like, Chris Godwin looked really good against Washington. He looked like Chris Godwin of 3 or 4 years ago. He's going to be lining up in the slot again the whole time for Tampa Bay. So I love Chris Godwin. I probably would have played Chris Godwin over Keenan Allen this week specifically because I don't like Keenan Allen in Chicago. But that's a positive for Luke. Chris Godwin's a massive positive. The utilization of Saquon's a big positive. Being able to sneak out a win when Patrick Mahomes had a bad game is a positive for Luke. And if Stephon Diggs keeps being the goal line to go guy, I mean, that's a positive. A lot of negatives. I don't know how much I want to dwell on it because I want Luke to have a good week. Enjoy the win. Devontae Smith also a positive. Once again, I think that might have been a league or a year-saving pick by Luke when he got Devontae Smith in like the 5th or 6th round. But I digress. Michael Pittman was a non-factor. David Njoku is decapitated. DeAndre Swift, non-factor. Really only had 30 rushing yards. So there's a lot of issues with this team, but he's going to win games. Just like he did this week, he's going to be playing teams that are having a tough time like Brandon's, and he's going to win games this year. And so I'm really excited to see what happens. If Saquon Barkley stays healthy, could be a really interesting year for Luke. So he deserves the 6th spot. I'm hoping he'll be in that spot again next week, but he gets to face off against the proud owner and operator of Brennan's Butthole, Brennan the Biz, and I'm not sure he will win that showdown. All right, in the 7th spot this week, we have the Hilton Head Whalers, Tim, who I don't think is going to stay this low for too long. Like I said in the intro, once you kind of get to some of these bottom tier teams for this week, I think they're going to be shooting up in the rankings. Tim is one of those teams. He just happened to run up against the 4-time and current reigning champion ZP3. Tim scored over 100 points, so I think his stock is going to go up as the weeks go on. Let's take a look at his team, see what was going on. The first red flag, obviously Joe Burrow. The Bengals looked really bad. Now, New England does have an underrated defense, and New England always plays Cincinnati really well. But they look like a very rusty team, and that is a little bit of a cause for concern. I mean, if Joe Burrow has a game, this might be a little bit of a different look for this week. But Josh Jacobs and Jahmyr Gibbs, I like the utilization of Josh Jacobs. Wish he could have gotten a touchdown. That kind of would have changed the complexion for him this week. Jahmyr Gibbs, little concern about how much they used Monty, especially in overtime. He looked like the still 1A pick for the Lions. I'm hoping as the season goes on, Jahmyr Gibbs takes on more of that rec load. But not going to complain about that, 13.4 points. I think that'll continue to rise. Tyreek having a Tyreek game. Just solid performance at a Tyreek Hill. Nico Collins, basically the number 1 wide receiver for Houston. 10 points a week isn't drastic for him. I think that's reasonable. I am nervous about Malik Neighbors because Minnesota doesn't have a great defense, and this was a very pass-heavy scheme whenever they were playing from behind, and Malik Neighbors only put up 66 receiving yards. I think most teams are going to key in on him and take him out because he's really the only piece in this offense that needs to be double-teamed or taken out. But anyways, positives. Ryan Robinson Jr. He's been a tease the last 2 years. He's had some really great games, and then he kind of disappears. I really like him in this Washington offense with Jaden Daniels because it's going to be more of a college-like offense, which I think Brian Robinson is going to do very well in. I think he's going to get a lot of goal line work. And Jaden Daniels, another positive for Tim, a sleeper pick for Tim, really showing up fantasy-wise in this week. Not a great game overall for him, but fantasy-wise, great game for Jaden Daniels. Reminds me a lot of RG3. I think RG3 was a better thrower and passer of the football. Jaden Daniels is a better scrambler. But really excited about what Jaden Daniels can do for this Commanders team with enough reps. RG3 led my team to a championship. So, sky's the limit, Tim. Negatives for Tim, obviously, again, Joe Burrow's a negative. I think Malik Neighbors, you want to see more against a defense that isn't great. But I think that's pretty much it. I think Tim is, as the weeks go on, is going to rise up because I think most of this is pretty consistent on the point totals. And if he's scoring, 100, 105 points weekly, he's going to win some games. So not too worried about Tim. Good luck, Tim, next week. All right, in the 8th spot this week, we have the gentleman, Mike, who missed an opportunity this week to plant himself in the top 4 power rankings and also be 1-0 and beat champ. And this kind of goes back to the whole thing I was talking about in the draft pick video, reviewing that, of Mike doing the 0 RB strategy for the first 4-ish rounds and me being like, oh gosh, he's killing the 0 RB strategy. And then he got off track and kind of got in his own way. And he kind of did the same thing this week. What do I mean by that? Mike played Darnell Mooney against Pittsburgh. I don't know why he would do that. I'm like kind of surprised. It's the whole reason I chose Champ over Mike this week was because of that Darnell Mooney play. I didn't understand it. Mike's 3rd round pick was Sam Laporta. 3rd round pick was Sam Laporta. All right. And he's on his bench. He's not a healthy scratch. He's just on his bench. Sam Laporta is a better tight end than Mark Andrews, and he wasn't played. Sam Laporta is a better player than Darnell Mooney, and you didn't change your lineup to put Sam Laporta in. Kind of mind blown by that. Doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying Mike automatically wins if he plays Sam Laporta, but under no circumstances am I playing Darnell Mooney. Like, I guess you could say he would have played Deontay Johnson instead of Darnell Mooney, and he still would have lost. Jameson Williams is on your bench, dude. I don't know. I'm probably playing Jameson Williams and Sam Laporta, personally, and then this week looks totally different. Well, actually, what I'm probably doing differently is I'm taking Jerome Ford out of the flex spot. I'm putting him in RB instead of Raheem the Dream. I'm playing Sam Laporta or Jameson Williams in the flex, and then I'm playing Sam Laporta at tight end. So that's probably what I do. I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, Mike totally dropped the ball, because like I said, there's obviously a case that could be made that Deontay Johnson should be played over Jameson Williams for week 1 just to see what happens. But to draft Sam Laporta in the 3rd round and then have him on your bench week 1, and it's not like he's playing against a lockdown defense, that just blows my mind. If he scored more than 4.5 points, we would be talking even more about it. But I digress. There are positives we need to talk about with Mike's team. First one being Aaron Jones. What a playmaker. Love watching Aaron Jones when he's healthy because he's such a beast when he's healthy. Now, the problem is he played against a bad team, a bad defense. And so you don't know if they play against a mediocre or okay team if he gets nearly that production. A.J. Brown, however, played against a good defense, a good team, and had a great game. I think that's going to be consistent for Mike. Justin Jefferson also had a great week 1 back. So expecting better things from him. This was a really bad week in general for tight ends. So that's going to fade Mike even more because he's got 3 top-tier tight ends, basically. Jerome Ford had an okay game. Good on Jerome Ford's status, because like 12.9 points, you'll take that for Jerome Ford every week. It came really late in the game, and Dallas' defense had kind of let up. And so you just don't know if that's going to be sustainable. Lot of negatives, but Mike's team put up points. You just hope he can sustain that, and that Aaron Jones can stay healthy, because Jameson Williams, what a positive. I hope that's a breakout game for him. The Rams strategy was obviously taking Amon-Ra St. Brown out of the game, and Jameson Williams burnt them on that. So our team's going to continue to try to do that and let Jameson Williams burn them. Jameson Williams is also a little bit banged up now. So we'll see what happens. I just can't get over the fact that Sam Laporta is sitting on his bench. Hopefully Raheem the Dream also comes back soon as well. But that's it for Mike's team. All right, in the 9th spot was a team I had a lot of high hopes for this year. Now it's just week 1, so it's not like the year's over. But he took a pretty big blow this week. And really funky week 1 for Brandon. Like I said, I really like his team this year. And you could say, oh, Chase, how is he at 9 when he was the lowest scoring team this week? And to that I say,
go outside, nerd. Get out. Go. I ain't got time to be distracted by your worthless chime-ins. Go on.
When you actually take a look at Brandon's production, you will find that Brandon's top pick, Ja'Marr Chase, was limited most of this game. He still put up 6.2 points, but he was pretty limited this game. He also lost Puka Nacua in like the second quarter of the Rams game. And so you got to think he's going to put up more points. Ja'Marr Chase is usually going to put up more points, and he's not going to be the lowest scoring team this week. But I like Brandon's team. Puka is a tough blow to Brandon. I think he's still going to win enough games to make some noise. He still has a good enough team to make some noise. Positives. James Cook looked good. He's going to find the end zone. Just hold tight. He looked good. Ja'Marr Chase is going to have more touches. Puka, hopefully it's only like 4 games and not, 6 or 8, because that's going to suck if that's the case. I think Brandon made a whiff with Devin Singletary. It's a tough choice. I probably play Ramondre Stevenson over Devin Singletary because I think Ramondre Stevenson gets more touches, is a better running back at this point. And even though the New England offense sucks, it's a better offense than the Giants offense. And so I probably play Ramondre Stevenson over Devin Singletary. But I'm not gonna tear Brandon up for that one. That is still a tough choice, especially if you think Cincinnati is going to run away with that game, like most people thought. Greg the Leg with 1 point sucks for Brandon. And DJ Moore is going to have better games. Now, the one kind of big negative for Brandon, other than Puka Nacua being on the IR, is Travis Etienne did not have a great game for Jacksonville. I know he got a touchdown. Fantasy-wise, it wasn't an awful game. But just overall, he's the reason the Jacksonville Jaguars lost to the Dolphins. He fumbled. And so he's going to start splitting more and more touches with Tank Bigsby, which is not great for Travis Etienne. You really wanted him to be the bell cow in Jacksonville. So that's going to be a big deal. Getting Puka back is going to be a big deal, which is why Brandon's in the 9 spot. Again, really like this team if it's healthy. And it's a lot of question marks now for Brandon, unfortunately, to start the season. The big positive is the boys were buzzing in Cleveland. Love to see my boys buzzing. And Mike Zimmer, his defense week 1 looked better than Dan Quinn's defense did last year, even though we had some really good games last year. So hopefully Brandon gets it together. I would like to see him shooting up the rankings. And it's kind of a question mark right now. Kind of a question mark, which is why he's at that 9 spot. And finally, in that 10 spot, we've got the Riddler Diddler himself, Tyler. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time bashing Tyler's team because it's week 1. Things can change, and things can change quickly. But all I have to say after week 1 is yikes. Yikes. I do think Garrett Wilson is going to have much better games in the future for Tyler. All right. I don't know if Alvin Kamara is going to have better games in the future for Tyler, considering he was playing the worst team in the league. And the Saints really aren't that good. Jonathan Taylor will have better weeks for Indiana. But I'm not sure if Travis Kelce is going to have great weeks because he looked like he was running in quicksand. And it looks like they're trying to save him a little bit more for the end of the season. And so then you say, well, what about Tyler's bench? Because there's some holes here. He's playing Jerry Jeudy, Calvin Ridley, Zamir White, who lost a fumble and did not get used as much as Alexander Mattison. What about Tyler's bench? Well, I feel like it was either last year or the year before, or I talked about once Tyler has one injury, it's game over. I don't know if he needs the injury this year for it to be game over. 50% of his bench was injured and didn't play this week. Marquise Brown, out. T. Higgins was out. Nick Chubb, out. Christian Watson, his quarterback, just got out for like 4 to 6 weeks. So you could argue that most of Tyler's bench players are affected by injury at this point. Now, Jared Goff is going to have better weeks for sure. I'm just like, I don't know what we're going to do, Tyler. I hope Travis Kelce has better weeks. I don't know. Kind of over Travis Kelce. I think as a league, we're probably over Travis Kelce. It's like every day he looks more like just an industry plant. But thoughts and prayers for Tyler. His team needs help. All right, and then finally we have the USDA Certified Lean America Game of the Week. First iteration for this season, and it's a classic matchup, the Civil War matchup. Myself versus Champ, dating back to the very first season of our league, back when we were just an 8-team league. But this is a battle really to see who's going to lead the division to start the season. So really excited for this week. A lot of great matchups this week across the league that we're really looking forward to. Make sure you thank our sponsors, Dominion Voting, for helping us have the most safe and certifiable elections. Hopefully that's the case in 2024 as well. But it's going to be a great week, league. I'm excited to see what happens, and good luck to all of you.